Today, I'd like to introduce a special guest and friend of mine, Renee Shepard, and she's the founder of Renee's Garden Seeds. Renee is here to help us solve a problem that frustrates many gardeners around the world, and that is how to keep gophers out of our garden. Renee, you've got a trial garden. It's very important to you, maybe 4 acres or so. So tell us about your test gardens, your trial gardens, and why they're so important.
Yeah, well, let me start out by saying that I think that I have tried most everything, and nothing, and I have tried everything that I've heard of. I have tried the electronic, battery operated things that you stick in the ground, and supposedly they send out vibrations, and the gophers are scared away. I have tried soap and deer hair and human hair. We've tried banana peels. You name it, and I'll try it no matter how harebrained it seems, because you just never know. But in the long run, nothing else works but this method, which is a barrier method, and it does not kill every gopher, but it kills most of them. And we'll take a look at how you build a gopher-resistant raised garden bed. Well, the seed company, Renee's Garden, doesn't sell anything that we haven't chosen by trial growing it first, comparing it with similar varieties, and deciding if it's really the best for home gardeners. And our standards are: is it easy to grow, and widely adopted, and does it taste terrific? Or if it's a flower, is it beautiful and vase worthy? Does it attract pollinators? And you really only can tell that by growing it yourself, because the seed trade is just like any other trade. Everybody's always pushing their latest and greatest, but that doesn't mean it's really worth it. So trial garden is vital to the whole company. We don't sell anything unless we write all our own packet backs, so we can only write them from personal experience. Therefore, gophers are our worst pests, followed by deer, and I'm not sure who gets to be first in that line, but I think it's a tie. But gophers are virulent and plentiful here, and it is our main pest. We maybe have a little bit of vole damage, but they really don't eat all the vegetables, eat everything, so they've never been as much of a problem. But gophers, or anything that comes up and eat plants from underground, are the main pests that we have.
So give me kind of a visual. How do you know that you've got a gopher problem? What happens?
Gophers move around underground with long tunnels. They make a hole where they come up maybe 2-3 inches across. And the way they do damage is they literally eat the roots of plants. And you can be sitting out in your yard looking at a newly planted, let's say you planted, I don't know, name a dahlia plant, or you have a dahlia in the ground that's a tuber. And all of a sudden you see it's a still day and all the other plants are still. All of a sudden that one prized dahlia starts to kind of rotate and shiver. And then all of a sudden it gets sucked under. They literally eat things in front of your eyes.
So like they could take a cabbage and just go like they do in the cartoons.
Yeah, pretty much. You'd have to have a slow release. It takes a while. Or you go out in your garden and you have a cabbage patch, and there's 4 ones still growing nicely, and all the rest are kind of lying dead on the ground because something has eaten all the roots.
Oh, okay. So we're going to go to the best solution you found for gophers, right? So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So it looks like we're choosing a site here that you want to put a raised bed, and it needs to have good sunlight, good exposure. I mean, at least 6 hours of sunlight. So you want to measure the area where the bed will be, and you want to mark it with stakes. Now, thing is, the bed can be as long as you want, but you don't want to make it too wide, like maybe 4 feet. If you're a really short person like me, it might be 3.5 feet. So it's just wide enough to reach in from both sides without, breaking your back or stepping on it. You just don't want to walk on a raised bed, soil and raised bed. So here you're making one that's about 7 by 4. Then we got materials list here. So you need to get everything all together, your materials, and you use pretty much 6 by 6 or 4 by 6 You want redwood or other untreated rot-resistant lumber. Now, 2x6s are not recommended. They're not skookum enough. And you'll need 24-inch by 5/8 inch steel stakes, and that's to hold the bed in place. Galvanized steel. Now, galvanized steel, is this, Renee, for the stakes themselves?
Yes, they should be galvanized steel stakes so they don't rust.
Okay. Then the hardware cloth you need, this is 1/2 inch hardware cloth. Now, you're not talking about chicken wire, right?
I want to be very clear about that. Chicken wire doesn't last very long. It always rots or breaks. So this is what's called hardware cloth. It shows us that there's a roll of it. It's basically fencing.
Okay, and that's what you use to line the bottom of the bed. Now you can buy hardware cloth in 3-foot wide rolls, but again, do not use chicken wire, or sometimes you can call it gopher wire. It just does not work, like Renee says. Then you want heavy duty staples to fasten the hardware cloth to the sides of the bed, and we'll show you that. And you'll need tools like a shovel, a drill, mallet, and some wire cutters. You want to set your lumber on a level ground. You might have to do a little extra digging. You want to match up the corners to make the border of the bed. So then you drill holes all the way through the lumber. And this is to set the steel posts all the way through. And then the stakes will secure the lumber to the ground itself. Now with a mallet, you want to pound on the stakes through the wood and into the ground until the top of the post is flush with the wood, of course. This looks like you're at a cemetery or something, but relax, it's okay. So now the lumber is in place. So you want to dig out the soil to, say, 18 inches or so. Have you found that to be anything different, Renee?
No, that sounds about right. We're going to line this with the hardware cloth, and this form, as you'll see, forms a barrier.
You'll need to buy 2 lengths of hardware cloth so they can be joined in the center to form one large sheet, and that'll stretch from the bottom of the bed up sides. Think like a bathtub here. The length of the hardware cloth needs to include enough for that total length of the bed up the sides. So you're going to overlap the 2 pieces by at least a few inches in the center, maybe more, and then sew the strips together. Now, sewing the strips together to make a secure seam, and you use thin, flexible wire like fencing wire, and that'll help you make a tight seam. Now, after you cut the hardware cloth to the correct size, then you place it in the bottom of the bed, and then you form it to the sides, like push, push, push. So remember, the hardware cloth needs to reach from the bottom of the bed up to the lumber so it can be fastened tight. So once it's in place, you fasten the hardware cloth to the lumber with heavy-duty staples, at least every 3 inches. And this prevents the hardware cloth from moving, sagging, creating gaps, and so on. Now, if the hardware cloth is too shallow to reach up the sides, because maybe your bed is too deep, go ahead and cut extra strips that will then overlap at least several inches and sew up that seam as well with that flexible wire. You don't want the critters to slip between the pieces. That's what's key, okay?
When you're stapling the hardware cloth to the sides, make sure that it is tight and no more than 3 inches, because believe it or not, they will attempt to come up between the staples. So you really want it secure. And then when you're taking the hardware cloth and laying it, so you're basically forming a huge wire basket, if you can either sew the 2 pieces together with the regular skinny wire, or you can overlap them about a foot, and then the weight of the soil will do that. But I like to sew them together with wire just to be really sure that there's nowhere they're going to get in.
They're sneaky. So once that hardware cloth is fastened in place, the bed is ready to be filled with soil that you took out initially. So when refilling the bed, this is a good time to amend it with compost or what other inputs you want to add to it. So fluffing it up with compost is a good idea.
The important thing is you should definitely amend the soil, adding maybe 4 or 5 inches of, if it's a new bed, 4 or 5 inches of compost would be a good idea, and add it to the top 6 inches. This makes it easy, good time to amend it. And when you put the soil in, you would put it a little higher than the edges of the bed, you might mention, because it'll settle. Make it higher than it should not be level. It should be, like banana bread in a pot.
I like that.
Here's a picture of one of our backyard-like trial gardens where we grow lots of things in pots, but you also see some of the finished garden beds. Now, if you went around the front landscape portion of the house, you would see more pots, but you'd also see really nice 4 or 5 perennial border. But what you can't see, you need an infrared machine, is every single plant is in a gopher basket. We happen to purchase them by the gross. The only thing that will keep a gopher out is a barrier.
How would you describe a gopher basket?
Well, we buy them. You can make them out of galvanized mesh. They will last 5 or 6 years depending on your garden, but we purchase them. Gopher baskets, which in our garden centers out here where gophers are a menace, are even at Home Depot, are right in front with the bags of soils. So it is an investment. If you don't want to spend any money on them, then you need to make them up yourself. It just needs to be a good basket that when you put it in the ground will amply contain at least the size of the pot it was in, and probably bigger, so it has room to grow, and it should come up above the ground at least an inch or two. For your backyard borders, which do not have formal raised beds, we plant everything in gopher cages, which are sold flat, and then you open them up and put them in the ground and plant into them. Gopher baskets are sold in 2, 3, 5, 15, and 30 gallons. So all our from our fruit trees down, everything lives in a gopher basket. So when you planted them, you can't see them because we mulch on top of them.
Oh my gosh. You really have to think
do
ahead.
It once. I mean, you do it when you plant it. You don't think of it as a burden because you never not do it. You know what I mean?
Got it. Okay.
And that really keeps, I would say, going back to the raised beds now. If you properly prepare those beds, it keeps, I would say, 80 to 85% of the gophers out. There are some gophers that will jump in, kind of like if you ever read Uncle Scrooge comics, he jumps in his money pile and cavort about, but they are really easy to catch with spring traps and get out because they have, of course, can't get away.
Ooh, yeah. So you can sleep at night knowing your gophers aren't going to be ravaging your entire garden.
Gophers, birds, and deer are our major 3 really menaces, with gophers competing with deer. But yes, gophers are, you can really do what I said, sit in your yard, watch one plant kind of shiver and shake, and then kind of, it's not like in a cartoon, it just doesn't go like slurping down an ice cream cone, but it eats the roots and the plant wilts, and there you are. I mean, they can do it as you watch them. Yes, it's very discouraging. What's really discouraging is they by far don't go for seedlings. At least when birds eat seedlings, you haven't spent as much time invested. But your cabbages can be like practically heading up, and they can get the whole bed because they eat a lot. A lot of people say, well, what did people do before there were gopher baskets? And the answer is they seem to increase as people increase, and there's more delectable things to eat.
If they're out in the wild, what do they eat?
I don't think there's many of them out in the wild because they don't have, Mr. McGregor's garden in the form of every backyard garden. I do think the population swells, and I do think they have different things to eat because they eat anything. in my pasture where I have my horses, they live there too, and they just eat grasses and different kinds of plants. So but they like garden plants best. That's why it seems like they're Genghis Khan and his hordes, but actually in a pasture grassland, they're more widely dispersed.
Well, and you're sort of responsible because you're picking some pretty tasty food for them.
Oh no, they like everything. I think
Okay.
they like a lot of ornamental plants. It's not just, I didn't mean to imply that it's food plants. They would eat, they will eat almost anything, any plant.
Even a rhododendron?
Um, well, I can't say because I plant everything in a gopher basket.
Oh,
So I
yeah, right.
never buy an expensive rhododendron. Let's see if the gopher will eat it. I just assume it will. Yeah. They will
Got it.
not eat daffodils. That's one thing I can tell you for sure. And deer don't eat them either. Love tulips and other spring bulbs, but not daffodils. Daffodils is something every gardener everywhere in the country can have because uh, there are very few pests. This seems like a lot of work, but the beds last about 12 years without much problem. And then if a gopher does jump in, it's pretty easy to trap them. And once you only have to do it once, and it is nice once your bed's marked out, you don't walk in it, like you say, it's easy to amend thing and much easier to work. So,
That's true.
so this can work in any box because you've got a wood, anything you can staple the hardware cloth to. Well, finding out how to make a gopher-proof garden bed has been really critical to our success in the trial garden because this is our livelihood, and a big predation by gopher can wipe out a huge test garden that we're relying on. So it really means that we rely on this method. So when I say try this, it'll work. I mean it because this is how I make my living.
All right, Renee, thank you so much, and
Sure.
we'll be talking.
Okay, sounds good. Bye.